Hello everyone, and welcome to Dead Internet Chronicles, where I observe and react to what I perceive to be a complex collection of chatbot chaos. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe so that the algorithm can help me grow my channel. Please do be aware that the themes discussed in this video may be dark and unconventional, and my narration is not explicitly an endorsement. That being said, let's get started. Today's video is going to be very interesting, and it's going to be interesting for a number of reasons, but mainly because I am going to explore the weirdest website on the internet, and I've actually written a script for this one. That's how important this video is to me. I've written a script for this video, for the intro at least, not the entire video, of course. But I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. So sit back and relax and enjoy our time together today. Minichan.net, the armpit of the internet. Born as one of multiple clones of the Swedish BBS AnonTalk, its history has been one of trolling and chaos from the very beginning. I was a user of AnonTalk as a preteen. I realized as an adult that this was problematic, as AnonTalk was known for hosting wide-ranging discussions about very immoral topics. At the time, I was blinded by what felt like a welcoming presence because of my status as a young adult. I admired the sysop despite his toxic touch on the website. Enigmatic and abusive, Sysop was something of a simulated fascist dictator, virtually commanding his army of PDF files to spread the word or the website would face certain death. As a response to a Sysop-operated automated spam bot on 4chan, users of the 4chan-hosted TinyChan and its younger cousin Minichan began trolling AnonTalk en masse, driving Sysop further into insanity and leading to the closure of the website and Sysop's subsequent disappearance from the internet. These days, a cloned attempt at a revival of TinyChan seems more like a general shitposting board with far fewer threads and bumps per day than Minichan, which, on the other hand, is considerably active for a website of its kind and seems to value thought-provoking and innovative discussions. Minichan is a collection of trolls trolling trolls. In a way, Minichan is one giant inside joke of which I am not a part, but as a lifelong shitposter, I have forced myself into the joke with a new approach, and Minichan provides me with a lot of cackles throughout my days. Heralded as a home for autistic stalkers, the community of Minichan is as zany as it is intelligent. There are a number of personalities on the website, and their musings often devolve into absolute flame wars with post-ironic sarcasm dealing the punches. If you make any post on this godforsaken website, you will be accused of being someone that you are not. Their obsession with a particular horror writer lives in nearly every thread, leading me to wonder if the horror writer was ever even an active user of the website at all, though sometimes I am also convinced that he is just in on the joke of bullying himself. Encyclopedia Dramatica has a very detailed description of the Minichan of old, but there isn't a lot of available information about it regarding the late 2010s and early 2020s. It's a miracle that the website is still up and running in 2023, but it does have a dedicated community of either mentally ill instigators or chaotic chatbots designed to make me question the validity of humanness on the internet. The moderation team is incredibly reasonable in their tolerance of these conversations, and I commend them for allowing free speech to live in our modern dystopian hellscape. All that being said, let's dive into the weirdest website on the internet, Minichan. So, as you can tell by looking at Minichan, it's a very minimalistic board. you've got the, title up here, Minichan, and if you hover over it, it usually comes up with a funny caption, of which there are only like two. It says, apparently still going this time. Let's refresh it and see what it says. Implying implications since 2010. Banned in Iran. Spoilers punishable by death. So, I mean, you've got an administration with a bit of a sense of humor about itself, so that's good. We've got, different tables here, or different links rather. We've got hot topics, replies, new topic, which is my favorite button, history, watch list, bulletins, events, folks, search, shuffle, and stuff. So these just go to various spots. You can go and view your post history. It's not showing that I have a post history for good reason. There are bulletins, and these bulletins are usually just shit posting. I don't know who makes these bulletins. Apparently anybody can make a bulletin, but I really don't ever make bulletins. It says bulletins are short bits of news or updates about the site posted by the management, but regulars can post them too. The bulletins first have to be accepted by the administrators or moderators. You cannot post bulletins at this time. So if you look through these bulletins, you can see that they are very odd. Here we have one from a month ago. It says, like a swaddle for adults that sucks your dick. And then it says, that's what your mom's for. Then we've got one that says, this service/website is 100% legal to use and host in all, even remotely sane jurisdictions. It is absolutely not some sort of child porn hub, as some scumbag liars will try to convince you. Having to point this out feels unreal. So it looks like that was just a copy-paste from an old Anon Talk bulletin, which, in my experience with Anon Talk, I never saw this type of content posted there. I saw a lot of concerning conversations, but as I said, that was something that made me feel special, and it fueled my narcissism in a way. So I would often post topics about myself being I was probably 12 at the time, 12 or 13. I would often post topics about myself being a preteen, and of course, being a preteen, it would get a million replies, which in retrospect were most likely trolls from Tinychan and Minichan. So we got one that says, hi guys, and then it says, San Marcos, no fucking way. Then someone says, uh-oh, wall of text. Guess that means I didn't say anything at all. Probably won't read it. Probably just insult me. I guess the point is to have the most unproductive, contentious, and empty exchanges with me as possible. And then this says something, I don't know what that symbol is actually called. That is M. Rosefeet Miller. So this one says, I am fat but have no money for food. I have no kids but am attracted to them sexually. I am a prolific author of image board posts, yet my publishing attempts fail. I am an international swashbuckler, yet I spend my days in a dimly lit bedroom in my mom's basement. Who am I? So again, this is, these two go hand in hand, because these people are obsessed with a horror writer that they continuously stalk and harass. I don't understand the joke. I truly do not understand the joke. I have been using this fora for, maybe about 2 years now. And to this day, I still don't know if Matt actually posts on the board. Every topic that anybody posts will eventually devolve into somebody accusing that poster of being Matt. Now, these people make all kinds of claims about Matt, and honestly, I don't know what ones to believe and what ones to not believe. This is one of those examples in which they accuse him of being a pedophile. I personally don't know for certain that he is. But this just seems like something that they would accuse somebody of just to do it. Like, maybe if somebody can bring up posts of his from like 2010, and prove that he was posting these things, then I could maybe understand their thought process. But to me, it just seems like they are accusing him of being something, which may be projection. I'm not sure what the deal with that is, but again, like I said, these people are just trolls that troll trolls. And I honestly think he's in on the joke. If you want to know my honest opinion, I'd say he's probably in on the joke, and they're just a big group of friends that use him as a punching bag. But I'm not going to read through all these bulletins, because really bulletins aren't the fun part of Minichan. The fun part of Minichan is the arguments that take place in every thread. Not every thread, but most threads eventually devolve into an argument. So here we've got Fake Anon and Ninja about town. And Anonymous A started this discussion about 3 days ago, and it's a picture from a 90s sitcom. I'm not really a fan of 90s sitcoms, but this one is said to be a classic. I'm a fan of Costanza. I like George Costanza, so it is what it is. Anonymous B says, "Nah, imagine a stinky little man in his late 20s dressed like he's some kind of dirty punk hippie with stains on his clothes, and a gangly dorky guy wearing white New Balance shoes with ankle-high socks, cargo shorts, and plain solid colored t-shirt with kyphosis." Fake Anon says, "That's like 60% correct, not bad." And then somebody responds to the OP and says, "That was a great episode." And then Anonymous A says, "Do neighborhoods without skyscrapers frighten you?" And that was in response to Fake Anon. And Fake Anon says, "Washington, D.C. has no skyscrapers, so I would lean towards no." And Eric says, "I thought you lived in New York." And Fake Anon says, "I did live there for several years, but moved to DC a few years ago." And then the thread devolved into some casual racism, so I'm going to go to a different thread, and hopefully we get something interesting. So this one is riddle concerning Anne Sullivan, teacher to Helen Keller. Why did Anne Sullivan, teacher to Helen Keller, make Helen fill her? You guessed it, to teach her to read lips. And then Cook, my dear friend Cook, says, "I feel suspicious of Helen Keller." I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but... So this one says, "What is your favorite Minichan character?" And it says, "Go ahead, please." And Anonymous B says, Who was that alcoholic pedophile who announced he was quitting the forum recently? And then Anonymous C says, I think his name was Mark or Mitt. And again, we've got obsession in full force already. His name was not Mark or Mitt, but it was something very similar. So we've got FAO Ninj, and FAO stands for the attention of. An indie who was, as far as I know, a username of Matt says, P.S. If you harm Magogo, I will send the Cody R. Bear army to you. And then Throckmorton posts, Throckmorton claims this thread. And Anonymous C says, yawn. And then Anonymous D says, do these stories exist anymore? I remember back in 2010 finding an old early 2000s message board where he had posted a whole bunch of them, but I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name either, so I am sorry to let you down. So here we've got a good one, and it says, it's a green text, and it says, spending several days making a photorealistic model of your living space in Blender. And as you can tell, this one has 84 replies, so this has to be good. Anonymous A says, just to test out different lighting setups. Sadly, I'm not sure I can trust it because the watts it uses seem to not quite replicate my current setup when I put in everything according to how the room is now. I have to manually adjust the light's power levels to get it replicating what I have. So it's hard to test out lights I don't own since I can't just put in the rated wattage. I want to get at least 2,000 lux everywhere in the room I'm working with, but as far as I can tell, there's no easy way to measure the lux in Blender. Combined with the problem above, it makes this exercise not as useful as it should have been. I mean, I have an idea how it'll look, but I hoped for a bit more certainty on if I've added enough light. Well, at least I can now test out how it'll look if I move my furniture to different configurations without actually having to do it. So Anonymous B responded 3 minutes later and said it's using radiant flux, which is a different measurement of watts. Then they posted 1 minute after that and said it is radiant flux or radiant power, which is also measured in watts. It is the energy radiated from the light in the form of visible light. If you want to set the power to real-world values, you have to convert the wattage of consumer bulbs or LED lights to radiant flux, but it is not a straightforward process. The wattage of bulbs means the electrical power required to power them. LED lights have a watt equivalent, which is neither the electrical power they require nor the amount of light they put out. Some consumer lights specify lumens or luminous flux, which is the radiant flux weighted with the wavelengths perceived by the human eye. I like the alliteration there. Weighted with the wavelengths. Sounds like a novel. They continue, to save you from doing the conversion, here is a table of typical power values for point, spot, and area lights. So I'm not going to read all this because it is a bunch of technical jargon, so we're going to move on to this part of it, and it says, these values will likely produce much brighter or dimmer lights than you would expect, because our eyes adapt while a render engine does not, so to compensate, adjust the exposure in render film. To get realistic results, remember to also set the light size and color to realistic values. The color of your lights will also influence how bright they appear to the human visual system. If you leave the power unchanged, a green light will seem the brightest, red darker, and blue the darkest. Thus, you might want to manually compensate for these perceived differences. They posted 1 minute after that and said, from the Blender documentation, and then post a link to Blender's documentation. And Anonymous A says, watts are the measure of radiant flux. Of course, not all emitted light is visible light, and that's where the measure of lumens comes in, which is just wattage but weighted by a function that removes contributions of wavelengths we can't see. Blender isn't explicitly doing this, but it also doesn't model light outside the visible spectrum, so it kind of is, but kind of isn't doing this. There are calculators to help convert from lumens, as claimed by the manufacturer of the light bulb, to watts. They're approximations because the conversion really depends on the full spectrum of color of the light. I tried a few. The other easier way is to take the actual electrical wattage of the bulb and look up from a table of bulb types the average conversion efficiency to visible light. For LEDs, it's around 90% if I recall. That gave the best results, but still required manual adjustment to get it looking right. Anonymous B replied, the watts listed on your lights aren't. They're a measurement of how much electricity is drawn. So it's already getting juicy. And then they said, just read what the documentation says. You're getting it all wrong. Stop being wrong about light. And then Anonymous A quotes them and says, 800 LM LED bulb 2.1 W. I really can't see how this makes any sense and tells me there's something not quite right with their calibration. I have a few 750 lumen bulbs that use 9 watts. As I said, other sources are telling me these are about 90% efficient at turning the electrical power to visible light. It makes no sense that an 800 lumen bulb would be putting out only 2.1 watts of visible light. And then they linked their other post for some reason, even though the other person can clearly see that they posted it. Anonymous B says, read the documentation. Stop being wrong about light. Anonymous A says, start being actually helpful. Start spreading the word. Stop being dead. The documentation cannot change physical facts about the world, like the fact that no sane 800 lumen bulb is only going to give out 2.1 watts of visible light. Thanks. Anonymous B says, you aren't comprehending what is written. I can't help you unless you try. Anonymous A says, the documentation cannot change physical facts about the world. And B says, a rendering engine doesn't have human eyes. Read the documentation next time. Sucks to be you that your project was a waste of effort. Buy whatever lights you want and return what doesn't work, dork. A says, nothing you posted addresses anything that I've said. I don't know what world or universe the Blender developers live in, but a 800 lumen bulb giving 2.1 watts of visible light makes no sense and can be confirmed by 2 seconds of searching, or simply looking at literally any LED bulb you own and seeing that Blender's numbers are whack. Looking at the actual power draw, not the incandescent equivalent bull watts that no one's talking about here. So now we've got a new poster. Anonymous C joined in and quoted and said, they quoted A's post that said watts are the measure of radiant flux, and they said no, radiant flux is the energy radiated per second. Then they quoted B and said, the watts listed on your lights aren't. They're a measurement of how much electricity is drawn. And they said this, watts equal electrical power. B responds to A and says, "You are very confused." A responded to C and said, "No." And then they quoted Wikipedia and said, "The SI unit of radiant flux is the watt." Then they quoted, "Watts equal electrical power," and said, "Not quite. Watts are a general unit of power. Not all power is electrical, not even close. With light bulbs, the electrical power is converted to radiant flux. LEDs are about 90% efficient in performing this conversion in the visible spectrum." They also double posted and said, "You are an example of a generalized form of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Not only do you overestimate your own knowledge, you simultaneously underestimate everyone else's. What a dangerous combination, LOL." I'm telling you guys, this is Minichan. This is, no matter what you post, it doesn't. You could post something. You could post that Jesus has come back and declared salvation for everyone, and they would still argue with you about it. That's a bad example because these people aren't very religious. But like Jesus himself could post on this forum and post a picture of himself and prove that he was Jesus Christ, and they would still say, "No, you're Matt." So Anonymous B replied and said, "That's not what the wattage on your lighting denotes. If it says watts, it's telling you what the power draw is." And then A responded and said, "Try reading, with light bulbs, the electrical power is converted to radiant flux. LEDs are about 90% efficient in performing this conversion in the visible spectrum." And B replied, "I don't know I don't know what to tell you. Your idea was bad." They spelled "you're" wrong. "Even if Blender had a human vision simulator, what screen could you possibly use to display the renders? This is shtick. See you next week." That's another thing about Minichan 2 is it's all shtick. Like, nobody actually, like, legitimately posts anything. Every post that's made on this board is done in bad faith. And, people play characters. Like, it's weird, but, like, you have impersonators, like the Throckmorton trip poster that we saw in another thread, has a lot of impersonators, which could just be the same person posting on multiple different trip codes, just to create the illusion of having impersonators, which doesn't seem to make much sense. But B also posted, "Also, post the render of your apartment or it never happened." And A responds and says, "No, it wasn't. There is software out there that can do realistic lighting. Lighting engineers and even architects use it every day. In looking into this, I saw people saying that even some game engines, Unity and others if I recall, handle lighting better than Blender. Blender is years behind modern rendering software. It's remarkable that Unity would be better because Blender Cycles is a ray tracer, and it makes absolutely no sense that a game engine should beat it anywhere when it comes to light. But forgetting all that, all it takes is a single brain cell to realize there's something seriously wrong with the table they give in the documentation. Again, even forgetting that the actual numerical values don't match anything close to a bulb and its efficiency you'd buy here on planet Earth." And then they post more technical jargon and say, "While it depends on each exact bulb, you'd expect the average to be roughly linear, so we ought to expect with their calibration for the 800 LM bulb, that's the 1000 LM bulb should be set at," and then a math equation, Unlike their 2.9 watt suggestion, which is over 10% off, which adds up because we're only talking about a single bulb here within close range of the rated value where we'd expect such errors to be very small. This makes the whole enterprise of using Blender for realistic lighting entirely pointless. It's impossible to know what value to set a light at just from the rated lumens of the bulb. You instead have to render up the whole scene and manually adjust it to what you actually see. Zero predictive value, zero use in planning. DJ Cocos Nucifera says, "Not this idiot again." That's quite ironic. Anonymous A says, "Who do you think I am? Also, try contributing to a discussion for once. Just a thought." Anonymous E joined in and says, "That feel when you make a photorealistic Blender model of your apartment and you have to hand sculpt your single bare light bulb." Anonymous A says, "Hi, Dave." Dave is another poster that many on this fora are obsessed with, and from what I know about Dave's LARP, he is LARPing as a Russian priest with a wife and family that he goes on holiday with very often. That's all I know about the character known as Father Marin, or Dave. Anonymous E says, "I don't know who Dave is or why he's living in your head rent-free." Anonymous B says, in response to A, "You have no idea what the equation to convert it is because you've been instead of looking it up. If you don't believe the handy cheat sheet, go read and learn how to do it instead of whining that you can't be bothered to look up how to use industry standard software and, quote, the chart doesn't seem right. Did you even try it? If the documentation quick start isn't cutting it for you, follow what it says and learn to convert the units." Anonymous B quotes DJ and says, "Not this idiot again," which was seeming to insinuate that this person, DJ, was the idiot. As far as I know, this person is typically known as Ninj, and I don't really know much about Ninj, but I do know that Ninj is very condescending. So Throckmorton, oh my god, I can't even get it out. Throckmorton says, "I have visited various BDSM furry sims in Second Life and was astounded by the cool club lighting." Anonymous A responds to B and says, "It's not a simple matter of conversion, you literal. To arrive at the power they are using requires certain assumptions on the efficiency of the bulb, but luckily neither of us have to perform detailed spectrographic measurements because plenty of people have already done it and provided average values and ranges of this efficiency for household LEDs. It just so happens that every single one of them disagrees by a large margin with what the Blender devs put in the official docs. You are wrong. The Blender rendering lighting system is wrong. Deal with it." This is a fun thread. I don't know why I didn't read this earlier. B responds and says, "It's not wrong, you are just too lazy to do the work." And then C jumps back in and says, "I guess you're going to have to write a stern email to Ron Rosendahl and the Blender Foundation." Anonymous G joins in and says, "Both of you are wrong." Boof joined in and replied, "Like, Who wants to live in a blender? That can't be good. As far as I know, Boof is a collective of posters who post under this name, and they just post general nonsense. Typically nothing that they post makes sense. A lot of one-liners and terrible jokes, but that's neither here nor there. Anonymous A says, "You've yet to provide any coherent response to what I've said." And then they also post in response to G and says, "Explain." Anonymous B says, "I did so. Either learn to use the software or don't." Anonymous A says, "No amount of learning to use rendering software will change physical reality. Sorry, not sorry." And B responds, "Your digital bedroom isn't in physical reality." A says, "And because of how broken Blender's lighting is, it's further removed still." They also say, "And anyway, you don't know that it isn't in physical reality. Platonic forms would like to have a word with you." B says, "It's not broken, you're too lazy to learn to use it." And A says, "The units being not only nowhere close to physical reality, but also being non-linearly off means that it's broken. You have no idea what you're talking about. Just accept it and move on." And Anonymous I joined in and says, "Autists arguing with autists." Fair point. B says to A, "So learn the equations. It's not linear. Boo hop." I think they meant boo hoo, but boo hop works too. A says, "So the relation I'm referring to is linear, literally." And then Anonymous A responded to I and said, "Get that GED." And I replied and said, "I literally have over 20 PhDs. Thanks." And B responded to A and said, "I linked the Blender documentation at the very top of this thread, and you either didn't read it or are too dumb to understand it. Anyway, don't use Blender for this. Download Bear Hanging Lightbulb Simulator 2024. And A responds and says, "You were too dumb to read, much less understand what you posted." B says, "Kill yourself." And A says, "You are having a hard time accepting that you're wrong. Me living or dying has nothing to do with it and won't fix whatever deep-seated mental problems you have." And E comes back in and says, "Your assumption that Blender should be a direct replica of physical reality is erroneous." A responds and says, "What do you mean by direct replica? It should at least be able to take sane values of luminous power and give an output somewhat similar to what an actual room would look like. Other software has apparently been able to do this for years. No one is asking for realistic simulations of quantum teleportation or black hole thermodynamics." And E responds and quotes this and says, "You have made that up inside your head." And A responds and says, "Let me put it the other way. Why shouldn't Blender be able to do this when so many other programs are, some of which aren't even ray tracers? The fact that they are using SI units like watts heavily implies this is what they are aiming to do. Otherwise, they should have just called it Blender bullshit units or some such." And B says, Anonymous B says, "Why can't you afford light bulbs? You, quote, spent several days modeling your bedroom, but you should have just bought some lights to try out." Fair point. Very fair point. And then Anonymous B says, "This blank getting uppity and he can't even afford to order different lights for he room." Well, maybe you should learn to spell. E says, clearly, despite having a name the same as real-world SI units, Blender uses Blender bullshit units. And then A says, they are unserious fraud scam units. And then A says to B, sounds like a lot of projection, LMAO. I'm planning to install inset overhead lights, which involves cutting into the ceiling, so a little bit of planning can go a long way with a nearly irreversible installation. And B says, now you can't afford to fix holes in your ceiling. What a loser. And then C responds to another post, looks like further back in the thread, and says, oh well, you're just going to have to write your own model building app and rendering engine then. Make it free and open source so we can see where you copy/paste from Blender's source code when you realize they got a lot of shit right. I recommend Vulkan/C++. And A responds to B and says, no matter the price, it's easier to rip out and redo an entire ceiling than to simply plan a little and not make inappropriate and misplaced holes in it. Am I right? That's what you're saying, LOL. And then they responded to C and said, there's also a lot of shit they got horribly wrong, since I suspect it's probably not trivial for them to get the units right due to major fundamental physical inaccuracies central to their approach. And then E responds to A in, looks like this post about the unserious fraud scam units, and says, maybe, maybe not. Either way, there is documentation which explains how to convert real-world units so Blender will approximate them with Blender bullshit units. And A responds, no there isn't. And then B says, yes there is. And then posts a nice picture here to explain. And then Anonymous A quotes the picture and it says, value 683, and then my arbitrary values. And then B says, use the nodes or do the math yourself, you lazy f***. A says, no, there isn't any math other than manually fine-tuning. And B says, keep thinking that, I hope you ruin your ceiling. And A says, you seem upset. And B says, so you admit it was a troll topic. Good day, sir. And A says, reality doesn't change because you get upset. Reality doesn't change because someone writes something in a software package's documentation. This is not hard to understand. And B says, it's not a light bulb simulator for people who want to make sure they buy right light bulbs. Sorry you got so confused. It's time to move on. And A says, it aims to be much more than that, actually, and it fails spectacularly. Using a simple wave equation, one can get better any estimates of lux measurements than Blender. What an embarrassment you are. And B says, use something else then, idiot. And A says, no. And E responds to a different post, this post it looks like, and says, the Blenderverse has different laws of physics, you see. And DW says, just do it by eye, Jesus Christ. And A says, do what by eye? And that was 1 hour ago, so this has been going on for like 5 days. This person is just pissed off about their lighting. That's good. So here's one that says, line of the day. Boof says, do you think fat people are around or are they flat too? And then Anonymous B says, what? And then Boof says, Bill Burr in response to some flat earth chode. See, like I said, a lot of these just don't make much sense. Someone said, for the attention of Svet, which of these reactions do you most see yourself in? And then we've got a picture here, and it's got a lot of stuff going on. And DW says, that was not a cocaine analog. And A says, kindly explain what Mr. Poopy Butthole is doing on the right side. So, Throckmorton asks, what is your favorite cartoon character? Go ahead, please. And Eric says, Rin. And Anonymous C joins in and says, Math Miller. Rest in peace, Mac Miller. Someone said, hey DW, and then they posted in another language. Wanting to say that might be Dutch. It says, not for long. If they keep this up, I'll quickly bring them some McDonald's so it will stop existing even faster. And then we've got Vishna here. This picture gets spammed in a lot of threads for whatever reason. Throckmorton comes in and says, my wife. Someone posts, eating gas station sushi, discuss. And then Throckmorton says, so delicious and authentic. Throckmorton posts a lot. So we've got one that says, Chris Chan just belched, and then a link to a video, and then a bump from Eric. So I'm not going to watch this video because I don't really care about Chris Chan that much. Someone says, whatever happened to that Ducky character? Has literally everyone abandoned Tiny Chan now? And Anonymous B says, I'm not sure I could care any less. And then Anonymous A says, try anyway. And then Anonymous C says, ever since the Burt and Trucker drama died down, the place went downhill. Now it's just a few left. So we've got a thread that reads, I have elephantitis of the cock. Boof says, it's huge. And then Boof joined in and says, hey, that's swell. And then Cook says, I knew someone who had testicles so big the hospital couldn't find his penis. It's actually really scary, especially for Cook. Cook has a very, very intense fear of men. I don't know what it is, but it's almost like a hatred. It's kind of concerning. So we're going to skip the Wordle thread because, to be honest, I couldn't care less about Wordle. Somebody said, why are US Americans so dumb? There's a YouTube video on it, but it doesn't really strike. Political incoherence. Ecological idiocy. Canada is similarly placed, but smarter. I don't know, really. And then DJ Medium Chain Triglycerides says, public education is garbage. Higher education isn't affordable, and the USA relies on having a dumb underclass populace to continue existing as it does. The Prussian school system we based ours off of is not very conducive to critical thinking or learning. It's not very complicated. And then Anonymous C responds and says, we're not dumb, you're just a slave to the propaganda you see on the anti-American Reddit. America is anything and everything. And Boof joined in and said, because there are... And Anonymous E responded, Canada is similarly placed but smarter. LOL. And then Anonymous F says, maybe you should be proper with your grammar before proceeding to call people dumb. And DW says, I blame credit cards. And then Father Dave says, when I posted my horse/fly lateral thinking problem on Russian, German, French, and Italian forums, somebody got the answer within a week. I'm just saying. Well, maybe if you would give us the answer, we could finally come to an understanding. But I don't think there actually is an answer. I really truly don't. So someone says, "Hi all, it's Indy checking in." Indy says, "Amazing things are happening in my life. More news later. Just checking in to say hi." And then Anonymous B says, "Indy, I almost forgot about you, haha. If you have a lot going on in your life, don't feel the need to check in here. The community's been quite busy, and I think it's safe to say most of us didn't even notice your absence." And then Anonymous C says, "How do you write characters that are nerve-wracking and can actually make the reader genuinely nervous and scared?" And then Anonymous D says, "Who are you?" Well, this person is obsessed. That's who they are. So someone says, "This is Indy, the real Indy. It's been a good run for her, but I am quitting Minichan. Some great things are happening in my life, and things are going to change a lot. I'm not going to post here anymore. It's been fun as hell, and I appreciate how this fora got me through grad school, China, and beyond. I truly love you all, but I'm on the edge of something great, and I need to focus on working on that. Take care and be good. I might visit from time to time just to say hi. I love you forever, Fora." And Throckmorton says, "Bye, Indy." And then, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think this is the administrator of the board. He says, "Nobody ever leaves Minichan. Good luck and Godspeed." And then Anon D said, "Except for Eco and Nexus." I don't know these people, but as far as I know, Eco was a rapper that died. I think Nexus died too. I don't know much about them other than that. Boof joined in and replied with this heart smiley face. And Eric says, "Good luck. I just hope this great thing that's about to happen isn't going trans." And then Aunt says, "You aren't the only one, albeit for wholly different reasons. I may not be sitting far from one of the most notorious torpeda on the planet, lol." And then Anonymous H responds and says, "Welcome back," because this was 2 weeks ago. So yeah, that's about all I'm going to do, because my voice honestly hurts. I have been recording a lot of content lately, and I need to, keep practicing my voice and developing it. So I am going to go ahead and end this video, but in closing, let me say that Minichan is probably the funnest forum on the internet, and I say that because I am an autistic stalker myself. So it's no wonder that I fit right in with these wonderful characters. You could argue that I am the messiah of Minichan. I could argue that at least, because my posting is revolutionary and groundbreaking. And I think that they appreciate that. I really truly do think that they appreciate that, even though I'm not one of them. I think they can see that I was born in the darkness. I know my way around trolling, that is. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I have created a few quality storms on this board, and I'm proud of that. But, that being said, go out and check it out for yourself. Whenever you go and get on Minichan, you'll have to go to stuff and then you will have to get an ID. I don't know how to do that. It's been a while since I've done it. Download ID card. Well, that downloaded the ID card. But you can, just go around here and look and figure out a way to do it. There's a way to restore the ID, and you'll just, everything's done through a user ID. So it's just a matter of doing this process and, essentially creating an account, but it's not really an account. It just has all your post history and everything on it. Obviously, I have logged out of my account, so just to make it look more impartial, But either way, I hope you've had a good time watching and enjoying this video, and we are going to go ahead and shut it off. So have a good night, and goodbye.